it's not Greek to us. It's not Greek to us. Yeah, I know you've all heard that saying that, when something we don't really understand, we're like, oh, it's all Greek to me. It means we don't understand it. Well, when it comes to the U.S. and what's going on in Greece right now, it's not. It's not, oh, it's all Greek to us. Because it's not. Because the evidence shows, unfortunately, that we're really not too far behind. And guess what? It's going to be the Yaffee generation, the Millennial generation, that's going to have to pay for it. It's going to have to get us out of this. So I'm going to talk about what we can do as millennials, as the Yaffee generation. What is the next step for my generation so we are not headed down towards the place of Greece? Should be pretty interesting. By the way, you were listening to the voice of truth, the voice of reason, the voice of the millennial generation, Michael Yaffee here on Beyond Reason Radio, where we sift through everything in the news that is beyond reason and, well, give you the voice of reason. And, of course, I'm joined by executive producer Michael Formasano. How's it going? It's Friday.
Happy Friday.
Woohoo! All right, how was your week going?
Not too bad. Busy working. How about you?
Pretty much. Just behind a microphone.
Yeah,
just
same old.
Doing this stuff, All right, 407-674-1025, toll-free 855-545-1025. Do you have any comments? I'm also going to get into what's causing a lot of controversy, and that is the new MTV documentary coming out about white people. Well, that's what it's called, white people. And I'm going to talk about how while this might be, you look like you have something to say, Mike. Go ahead.
It's called white people?
Yes.
That's the best they could do?
I think that's all they're going to need, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I'm actually interested to see how this one plays out, so we'll get into that soon.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in the next segment. I'm curious to see how that's going to play out as well. I do not have my hopes up for that. I have a feeling it's not going to be an honest conversation on race. It's going to be, just trying to convince young white people that they are racist. So that's good. Just what I want to see from MTV, a lecture on why I'm racist. We'll get to that more in the next segment. If you want to jump on the phones early, 407-674-1025, you can on that as well. But I really wanted to get into the Greece thing because Greece has been huge in the news this week because, well, as you all know, they can't pay their debts. They can't. They just say, no, we're not going to pay our debts. And then they had a vote to make a deal with the EU to have more austerity measures so they could pay their debts. And the people of Greece said, nope, we like our welfare state. Yeah, we don't want that. And the prime minister of Greece, who is an avowed socialist, said he wanted the people to vote against it. They don't want to pay their debts over there. So I started doing some research and I started doing some digging about why. What exactly happened that got Greece in this mess? And does it matter to us as Americans? And I'm not just talking about Americans in the stock market who might have some investments that might be affected by this. I'm talking about us, especially the millennial generation. Is there something we can learn from this? And is this something that could happen to us? We like to think, no. We're big, we're too powerful, we're too rich, nothing like that could ever happen. Well, let me give you some examples of where Greece is and where we are. Greece owes $363 billion. $363 billion, that's what they owe, that they can't pay. We owe $18 trillion. Yeah. Greece, their debt rate related to their GDP, their debt is 175% of their GDP. That's a lot. 175% is what they owe compared to their GDP. So it would take more than a year, almost 2 years of their entire economy to pay for their debt. What's our debt to GDP? Well, we're not that high. We're at 106%. Our debt is 106% of our GDP. That means our whole economy, our whole economic output is more. The debt is more than a whole year of our economic output in the United States. 106% of GDP. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I was looking up and I found an article from the New York Post that talked about this. What got Greece in this mess? Well, it seems it was a lot of things. Obviously, it was the welfare state, the 30-hour work week, all that stuff, which, by the way, Obamacare gave us. Now we have a 30-hour work week. And Jeb Bush made a comment on that, and he's getting blasted for it. And I don't usually defend Jeb Bush, but he's right on this. And I'm going to talk about that. That's later in the show. I don't want to get into that right now. But here's another thing that happened, which I didn't really realize this. I found it very interesting. What really caused the Greek debt was their pension system. Their pension system, their public government pension system, was a big part of the problem. Greeks could retire after just 35 years and start collecting 80% of their final salary. Many went into retirement in their mid-50s. So that means they're retiring in their mid-50s. They're living to their 80s, and they're getting 80% of their final salary every year for not working or contributing to the economy. That's where they were. Today, Greece has only 4 working people for every 3 retirees. Pensions consume more than half of all government revenue. And the population is rapidly aging. Does that sound familiar? Is our population... I almost want to say that the baby boomer generation might be retiring soon, and they're a huge population. See, it's not that dissimilar from us. So when I look at that and I look at their pension system, just think about that, dealing directly with retirees. They just raised their retirement age from like 50-something to 62. And got a whole bunch of flack. Oh, it's too much. You can't say I have to retire at 62. We hear we're at 67. But when you look at the United States, okay, can the United States get into this? By the way, it's going to be us, the millennial generation, that has to pay for it, like I said. The Congressional Budget Office released its 2015 long-term budget outlook. I talked about this before. The document says that Social Security, our government retires system for most of the country, Social Security will become insolvent by 2029. That means in 2029, they will not have enough money in the Social Security fund to fund it. It's not that far away. It's really not that far away when you think about it. We're not going to have enough funds to pay for Social Security by 2029. So what's going to pay for it? Well, debt. We're at $18 trillion in debt. Once you start looking at unfunded liabilities for things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, it's going up to $70 trillion, if not $100 trillion. What's that like? How much? That's like 100%. That's like, what, 500% of our GDP right there? Unbelievable. What could happen here? You think it can. Now we'll say, oh, we're just going to print more money. That's what we do. We just print more money. Eventually, that's just going to raise inflation. It's not going to work. It's all going to collapse. Also, when you're looking at the pension fund of states, I found this from Bloomberg. Right now, the U.S. public pension funds were facing a $2 trillion unpaid tab for benefits to retirees in U.S. public pension funds in this country. $2 trillion. That's unpaid right now. So what they're having to do is they're having to go overseas and invest overseas to try to get more money. The largest fund that is $302 billion, California Public Employees Retirement System. They don't have that. So they're talking about how they want to raise taxes there. They're talking about how we need to raise the Social Security tax to pay for that. $2 trillion unfunded pension funds. Social Security is going to be insolvent by 2029. Oh, and there's something else. I'm not done. Another thing that directly affects the millennial generation. We're gonna have to fix this. And I'm going to get into why I'm talking about this and why I'm directed you, the Yaffee generation. I'm telling you this because we have to change the way we think about government. I'm going to get into that more in a second. That's been a big theme of this show, but this is why. What we're seeing an example in Greece right now. It's almost like an experiment for us. It's no longer theory of what can happen in the United States. We are seeing what's happening in Greece. We can look at what happens when the socialist, welfare, big government state collapses. We're seeing it right in front of our eyes. But here's another thing. Americans own nearly $1.2 trillion in student loan debt as of March 2015. So we have Social Security going insolvent. We already have an $18 trillion debt. We have $70 trillion unfunded liability. We have $2 trillion in unpaid pension funds. And we have $1.2 trillion student loan debt that it's no way everybody in my generation is going to be able to pay off. Especially with an economy the way it is. Especially when we have more and more people out of the workforce. And then, of course, we have Obamacare. Obamacare, another entitlement that was added to the system that's going to have to be paid for. The student loan debt, what's going to happen, by the way, the government owns the student loan industry now. They took it over when they took over healthcare. They own the student loan industry. What's going to happen if students just decide not to pay it? We talked about on Bud's show a few weeks ago that there was a New York Times article that said, I'm not going to pay my student loans. I'm just deciding I'm not going to pay it. What happens if more and more people, which this is going to happen, what happens when more and more people just decide they're not going to pay their student loans? The government's going to bail them out. This is what's going to happen. The next big bubble is the student loan bubble, and we're going to expect the government to bail them out because it will be too big to fail, too many investments in it, all this stuff. Too many Americans affected, the government's going to bail them out. And where are we going to get the money? We don't have it. We're going to have to pay our debts. Right now, we're paying interest on our debt every year. But if this keeps growing, just imagine how the interest on our debt every year is going to keep growing. How much of our budget's going to be just the interest on our debt? Let me go over this again. Social Security. Don't mean to depress you all, but this is where we are. This is reality. Social Security is going to be insolvent by 2029. We have $2 trillion as of today of unpaid pension funds. We have $1.2 trillion student loan debt. Don't forget the $18 trillion debt as of this year. It's gone up $8 trillion since Obama's been in office. $18 trillion debt this year. As of right now for the country, $70 trillion in unfunded liabilities coming up. And think it can't happen? Greece is happening very fast. Oh, this is just way, way down the road. Do you realize that just 6.5 years ago, our debt was $10 trillion? And now it's $18 trillion? It can happen faster than we think. So why am I bringing all this up? Why did I decide to lead the show with this when I could have led it with the MTV documentary White People? That's what everybody's thinking about. That's the easy topic. That's the controversial topic that everybody wants to talk about. I'm leading with this because I'm trying to show you that we have to change our thinking on the role of government. It cannot be the role of government, the federal government, to be involved in anything. We can't afford it. We can't afford to pay for our retirement. The government can't afford to pay for our retirement, our health care, our college, everything. Because that's what they're doing right now. They're paying, and then they get into the state pensions, and they get into the state school systems, and it's money we don't have. And I'm saying this has been growing for a while, but I'm saying it's up to us, the millennial generation, the Yaffee generation, to change this thinking, to demand, because we're the ones who are going to have to pay it back. We're the ones that it's our futures being mortgaged right now. We're the ones who are going to have to pay this back. We're the ones who are not going to see Social Security. We're the ones that might be a point in Greece where we can't pay our debts because of what our parents and our grandparents have built for us. And it's up to us to reverse this. We have to. But first we have to learn history. First we have to learn what the role of government is. The role of government was supposed to be to protect our liberty and our rights, secure the nation, and regulate commerce. That's it. But now it's become a giant nanny state, welfare state, pension state, school state, whatever. And this is what we're getting. And it's not what a free country's supposed to be. And I don't want to be lectured by people who think we as a free people can't take care of this stuff on our own. We did for the first 150, 200 years of this country. And we can. A free people and a free economy can accomplish a lot more than a top-down, centralized, bureaucratic government control. So we have to reach out. Our leaders have to reach out to the Yaffee generation, and we as the Yaffee generation have to say, look, we want to be free. Just give us the opportunity at freedom, and we'll show you that America can be the most prosperous. We already are the most prosperous, although China's catching up, that we can be the America, the greatest country in the world, the shining city on a hill again. That we're not in decline. That America's best days are not behind us. That's where we are. But it's going to take us rethinking the role of all this. Because I don't want to be like Greece. And it can be done. 407-674-1025. We're going to get into white people. White people. Woohoo. In the next segment. You're listening to Beyond Reason News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime.
Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. This is where we talk faith, culture, politics, and you're listening to the voice of truth, the voice of reason, the voice of the millennial generation that sifts through everything in the news. That is Beyond Reason. We're going to get to something here that is a little beyond reason, and I'm going to get Mike, the producer's take as well. MTV has a new documentary coming out called, well, White People. That's it. Just called White People. And, well, Mike, just go ahead and play the trailer here and get your take and get the caller's take on this. 407-674-1025. Listen to the trailer for White People.
So we're doing a film for MTV on what it means to be young and white.
Okay.
Okay.
If you say the wrong thing, then suddenly you are a racist.
I'm trying to be careful here.
I don't want to offend people.
I feel like you guys are attacking me now.
If I bring up any sort of race issue with my parents, they immediately assume that I'm demonizing them.
Give me a hug, give me a hug.
How might your life be different if you weren't white? When you say white, what does that mean to you?
We've never had to internalize what white people have done in America, but here, you can't escape that.
Feels like I'm being discriminated against.
You kind of get this feeling that things belong to you.
I'm getting uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Hey, this is great. Let's get all uncomfortable together.
All right, so White People. It's hosted by Jose Antonio Vargas, who's an illegal immigrant, by the way. I'm sure he's going to talk about how much he loves America. Yeah, we'll see. But he insists, I found an article here from the Daily Mail, he insists it's not meant to shame white people. But when I hear stuff like white privilege and how one of the people say, you tend to feel like it belongs to you. What is she talking? I've never had this attitude. I'm white, so this belongs to me. Yeah. No. And then you talk about the real white history, what they're going to get into. I guarantee you it's not going to be positive. And before I give my take on this, Mike is young, and you're Latino, so you're not. Are you all Latino, half white, half Latino?
I got a pretty good mix in me.
Yeah, I have a mix too, and that was another thing I had. What is defined as white? And when we say white history, are we talking about the whites who are descendants from the beginning of this country, or are we talking about whites who are descendants from Irish immigrants or German immigrants? Or whites that came even later than that? Or what does it mean? What does that mean?
And that's a tough one nowadays, since there are so many mixed races in our country from all of our ancestors.
Exactly. Yeah, what if you're half white?
From.
What if you're like Mike? You're half white, half Latino. Or you're a mix. Or you're like me. On my dad's side, my ancestors were Polish Jews who escaped Poland from the Nazis. So am I supposed to be one of these white people that feels guilty about white privilege? Because I'm pretty sure if my descendants on at least part of my family heritage is Jews in Germany, I think they know a lot about what oppression is as well. So am I mixed in with a lot of these whites? What does it mean? This is why I get so tired of the whole race conversation, because I don't think anyone's having an honest conversation about this. I like what Ben Carson says. Underneath, he's like, I'm a brain surgeon, and trust me, underneath, all brains are the same. Race really doesn't matter, yet we still have people dividing us based on the pigmentation of your skin. That's it. Now, if I believe there was an honest discussion about this, and to really have an honest discussion about this, you would want not just white people and to make them feel uncomfortable about their whiteness and what they're afraid to say and talk about all this. If you really wanted to have an honest conversation about this, you would bring in people of all races, and you would talk about the issues all races are dealing with, and how racism a lot of times goes both ways. Or if you have a problem with some white racist, I guarantee a lot of these young people are not these white racists. So you say, look, there is still racism that exists in this country, and we need your help as young people to stand against racism. If I really felt that that's what this was about, then maybe I would support it. But I have a feeling that's not about this. This is about trying to show those young white people how racist they are, and they don't know it. The shaming them for being white and being racist. This is what I'm talking about. And before I go on, Mike, what was your take on this? Obviously you're probably going to watch it like I am.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out just to see what their main purpose is.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong here. Now, obviously, it's meant to be controversial because that's what get ratings.
Of course.
It's going to get ratings because it is what it is.
And I'm very interested to see how the people react, because I feel like of all the generations, ours should be the one to be least racist.
Right.
But there's this history of certain races being racist that I feel it kind of makes our generation feel like, because you're of this race that you should, to other people be racist. I'm curious to see how they take that side of the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as well. When you're talking about, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of times with people like who are directing this, or a lot of so-called civil rights leaders, to me, it doesn't seem like their goal is to be a post-racial nation. And what I mean by that is the goal of, say, what Martin Luther King said. And you really read some of his stuff. It's really great stuff about how he really wants us just to be defined by who we are as individuals. That's what this country really is about, is that we're all individuals. We all, no matter what our skin color, we all have unique gifts as individuals given to us by our Creator. And we're all unique. We all have different fingerprints. We're all individuals. But I feel like with a lot of so-called civil rights leaders and stuff like this, the goal is not to become that post-racial nation. The goal is revenge against whites for the history that whites have done, or revenge against this race, or from illegal immigrants. It's revenge because America took part of Mexico at one point, and not understanding the real history of all this. It's to divide us more. Now, I think the basis of all this too is politics. If they, it's easy to divide and conquer in politics. You divide us, you pit one group against the other, and then you tell that one group you're going to make the others pay for it, and you get elected. That's how politics works. But I wish we could just come to a point where we have an honest conversation, where we have all sides come together and we say, look, there still is racial animosity in this country. There still is racial tension. There's still racism that exists. How do we get past this racism? On both sides, on all sides. And the answer is really to focus on the individual and the individual character. That's not where this documentary is going. I guarantee it. This documentary is meant to shame white people for their history, shame white people for the white privilege that they don't even realize they had, make people... And by the way, we have to go to a break soon, but I actually think the deeper issue when it comes to this is not even to shame white people for the history, but to shame Americans for American history. There is this movement in this country that wants to get Americans to hate their own history. We have this love for America. We celebrate the 4th of July. And there seems to be this movement to hate our own history, to hate American history, because that's how they can change it. If they can change it to something that's different, they have to first get us to hate our heritage, to hate our Constitution, to hate our foundations, to hate American history. That is what it's at the root of a lot of this. They'll never admit that. But that's what I think is at the root of a lot of this. Do you agree or disagree? And if you want to have an honest conversation about race, let's do it right here. 407-674-1025. Toll free 855-545-1025. Call in. Give me your take. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio. News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Just search Bud Henninger or stream the show live by searching News Radio 1025 WFLA. It would be Beyond Reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio.
Well, welcome back to the show, Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com. Make sure to like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio, and follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. I'm tweeting all the time. I'm a tweeting machine, I guess. I don't know. Trying to get into the newfangled technology of us young kids. Actually, no, I love Twitter. I'm starting to like Twitter more than Facebook, believe it or not. Never thought I would say that. But the problem is with Facebook now is when you have a page that you're trying to promote on Facebook, it's very hard to reach people because they want you to pay for it. So they want you to pay to boost your post to reach more people, and it's getting to the point where it's almost impossible to reach people without paying for it. So very interesting. Twitter, at least you can post all the time, and at least people see it when it first comes up there. And but yeah, it's a whole social media game. I get it. Got to make money. They got to figure out a way to make money to survive. So whatever. So I'm about to do something right now that I didn't think I would do. Didn't know if I'd ever do it. And that is defend Jeb Bush. As many of you know who listen to this, I'm not a huge Jeb Bush fan. I think while he's better than Hillary Clinton, I think he's basically a big government Republican. He's not willing to do the things that we need to do to prevent us from becoming Greece, like I've been saying. The idea of limited government, he doesn't believe in that. His family's never really believed in that. So, but he made an interesting comment here, and he's getting a lot of flack for it from Hillary and others. A lot of controversy surrounding this, and conservatives, some Republicans and conservatives are mad at him for what he said here. So, and he was basically asked a question in an interview, and well, this is what he said.
My aspiration for the country, and I believe we can achieve it, is 4% growth as far as the eye can see, which means we have to be a lot more productive. Workforce participation has to rise from its all-time modern lows. Means that people need to work longer hours and through their productivity gain more income for their families. That's the only way we're going to get out of this rut that we're in.
All right, so I like to ask the non-biased opinion of my executive producer on this before I give my take. When you hear that from Jeb Bush, is there anything in there that sounds controversial to you?
Yeah.
What is it?
Talking about how we work.
Go ahead.
About how
we need to work longer hours?
Yeah.
And how do you take that? Because this is probably how most people took it.
I mean, I feel like he doesn't know what I do at work.
This is true. Now, you took it. This is where he's getting a lot of problems, and I have to defend him because this is what we do as a nation now. We hear sound bites, and then we react fast before really thinking. And I didn't give you a really chance to think it through. I had you put you on the spot here.
Which is cool.
But this is what we do. We immediately, as the media, we immediately react. We immediately criticize, and we're not thinking. A lot of people took it your way, that he's sort of lecturing the American people that they're not working hard enough. Is that kind of what you were going?
Well, that's how he kind of made it sound.
Right.
It's all about the way you deliver things, you know?
It really is. And his delivery wasn't the best. But when he was talking about, what I wanted to do is put this in context here. When he was talking about the work week, the labor force participation rate, he's right. We have one of the lowest labor force participation rates in the history of this country right now. A lot of people are just leaving the workforce. Now, Mike, again, your honest opinion, did he ever say why Americans are not working longer hours or why they're not working at all?
No, he didn't. And just that little bit of clarification would definitely make the general public
exactly.
react differently.
And he did afterwards, but you never hear you never hear the clarifications. You only hear the initial comments in the media. But let me read it again. My aspiration for the country, and I believe we can achieve it, is 4% growth as far as the eye can see. So he wants our economy to grow, which means we have to be a lot more productive. Workforce participation has to rise. Now, when he's talking about rise from its all-time modern lows, well, that's a fact. We have modern lows of workforce participation. It means that people need to work longer hours and through their productivity gain more income for their families. It's the only way we're going to get out of this. He never says why we're not working more hours. He never says why workforce participation is low. And that's what he was getting at that nobody is thinking about. Why is it that, say, Mike, you work here, you're part-time. What is your maximum amount of hours you can work here?
That I'm allowed to work
every
here?
week, yes.
Or that you're supposed to, maximum hours would be about 40 hours. Most.
No, what as a part-time employee?
As part-time.
What is the cutoff for you on hours every week?
Like 20. I don't know.
Well, that's what you're
much.
usually, but legally you cannot work over 29 hours a week.
Yes. Okay, I see where you're going here.
Yeah, legally you're not allowed to work over 29 hours a week. Because why? Because 30 hours is now considered full-time under Obamacare. That's why. That's what Jeb Bush is getting at here. He wants to bring the full-time work week back to 40 hours. It was cut to 30 hours over because of Obamacare. Now, what has been the result of that? A lot of people in our generation are trying to find works, and they're a lot of times getting, like you said, only 20 hours or even less hours. Why? Because they're not going to hire, instead of hiring one person, you might be able to keep them part-time, but instead of getting one person and saying, okay, you can work 36 hours, that's working more hours, that's more productivity towards the economy, what they're going to do is they're going to cut your hours to, say, 15, and then they're going to hire someone else, and they're going to work them 15 hours. So they don't have to pay for the Obamacare, the heavy healthcare costs. Because if you work over 30 hours now, you are required by law to provide health insurance to your employee. Well, not all the businesses can afford that or going to pay that. So what's happening is we are creating a whole generation, mostly the millennial generation, of part-time workers. A whole generation of part-time workers who cannot find full-time work. That is what he's getting at here. That when we need to work longer hours, he wants to create an economic environment so people can find full-time work, so they have the ability to work longer hours. So the workforce participation rate, he basically wants the economy to grow at 4% a year. When the economy is growing that much, people are going to try to find work again because a lot of people have given up, mostly because of Obamacare, to either find work at all or to find full-time work because they can't, once again, under Obamacare. What he is saying, and he needed to clarify this and said it better, I'll give you that. But this is one of those things where we have to think a little bit about what he's saying, because does anyone really believe that Jeb Bush just thinks people in this country are lazy and not working hard enough? And if he did believe that he would say that in an interview? Obviously, that's not what he meant. What he is saying here is we need to create an economic environment so people can work longer hours, so they can get full-time work, so they can find jobs, so they can be more productive. When you have a huge government state creating more of these entitlements, creating all these regulations, hamping them down on private business, that's what happens. An economy can't grow and people can't be productive. Not because they don't want to be productive, but they can't. The government is getting in their way. It's infringing on that ability to be productive.
That sounds so much better. Why couldn't have he just said that?
Well, I know he should hire me as part of his campaign, but then I would. I mean,
You
I
can
don't want
write
him
his
to win.
speeches.
Yeah,
But I don't want him to win either.
And one of the problems is it was in an interview. He was asked a question and he's just answering it casually, and it happens. You say stuff like that you haven't had time to really think and formulate it and say it. And then what we do now is we take sound bites and we put it viral. We put it everywhere, and we say this thing. We react. Oh my gosh! You hear what Jeb Bush said? He says Americans don't work hard enough. Does anyone actually believe that? What he's saying is he wants the economy to grow. And then when you look at the facts, that the labor force participation is the lowest, so he's right. And you look at his actual words and you realize he never said why. He never called out the American people, never said they're not working hard, they don't want to work hard enough, that he just wants to grow the economy. When you actually use your brain, your reason, and don't just react to things, you can get to it. So, but luckily you have me, the voice of reason, who can sift through all the beyond reason stuff.
What would we do without you?
I know, right? If the whole country would just get that, realize I'm right, just be a much better place, Mike. It just would be. If they would just come to me for the voice of reason, the voice of truth. That's really what I want to be with this show. I want to get to things like this, really look at what people are saying, really look at what's really happening in the issues, because it doesn't seem like anybody does that anymore. It doesn't seem like we really look deep into what's happening. We just react, and then we get upset, and we get offended without really thinking about what's going on. So this is the place where we don't just react, where we think, we use our reason and our brains, and we get through it. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com.
All right, so you're looking for something fun to do this weekend? Well, it turns out the place to go is Doc's Streetside Grill. Why? Well, at 7:30 tomorrow night, they have a concert. That's when the doors open for 7:30. The 8:30 is when the show starts. They have Brutha Neal and Real Deal, who calls himself a badass guitarist. Sounds pretty good to me. I have a concert at Doc's Streetside Grill for just $10. Food and bar open through the show. So if you're looking for something fun to do, go to Doc's Streetside Grill. Amazing. Awesome. And by the way, all evening, you can get their prime rib dinner with sides, $15. And brisket with sides, $17. Amazing. There's always lots of events going on at Dock Streetside Grill. Always fun times at Dock Streetside Grill. By the way, they have serious events too. Next Saturday, July 18th, they're actually having the Ted Cruz Florida Grassroots Victory Team Leadership Conference, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So if you're a supporter of Ted Cruz or something, you can go to that event as well. $35 tickets in advance, and Ted Cruz is going to talk via video conference. Dock Streetside Grill is the place to go to have an event. If you want to plan an event, just do it at Dock Streetside Grill. Dock Streetside Grill on West Orange Avenue, right across from ORMC, your prescription for fun times. Yes, where we talk faith, culture, and politics and sift through everything in the news. That is Beyond Reason, and what were the voice of reason that goes through all of that stuff. So I have another question for Mike here. Put him on the spot a lot today. Sorry, Mr. Formisano.
Keep them coming.
You handle it well. That's good. Okay. When you look...
Can't see me sweating.
Yeah, we don't have cameras in here yet. When you look, say at your money or something, and you see "In God We Trust," or you see that slogan somewhere, "In God We Trust," what is your reaction to that? Do you even have a reaction to that?
It just reminds me that our country was founded on faith and trusting in God. That's where we come from.
So you don't get the impression that this is an attempt to make us a theocracy, a Christian nation, and where our government is run by the church?
No, because that's how we were founded, is separation from church and state.
Okay, good. See, you have a reasonable mind, so that's good.
I guess that's why I, produce Beyond Reason.
Exactly. You have to have one of those to produce Beyond Reason. The reason I'm asking this is Hobby Lobby's getting some flack. Hobby Lobby, the Christian-based store. Have you ever been in a Hobby Lobby?
I love Hobby Lobby. I can spend hours in there.
So, when I first went in there, I was like, whoa. so cool. There's so much there.
It's huge, too.
I know.
Big store.
It's awesome. I love Hobby Lobby, too. But they put out an ad. I think they did it over the 4th of July. It was a newspaper ad, a bunch of places they put out, and it said in the middle, big letters, "In God We Trust." Okay, it doesn't seem controversial. And then they have quotes from former founders, former presidents on this very thing. Like George Washington, who said, "It's the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor." Okay. Washington said a lot of things like that. John Adams, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Okay, James Madison, "Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject for the governor of the universe, God." Now, seems pretty normal because it's right. A lot of our foundations were brought on faith. A lot of the revolutionary leaders, like, say, Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty, they did it for faith reasons. They wanted religious freedom. Well, I bring this up because there was an article, an op-ed piece in the Orlando Sentinel. By the way, for those listening to the podcast, I am out of Orlando, Beyond Reason broadcast out of Orlando. He says, "A Christian nation or one indivisible." And he talks about how Hobby Lobby did this, but he's like, one thing is clear. Because he asks, what is the goal of this? Well, I think the goal of this is just to say that we have been a nation that trusts in God over everything. It seems pretty obvious to me that our leaders did not think of themselves as God, but they trusted in God and they trusted in a higher power to govern. Well, he doesn't see it that way. He says the goal isn't to truly educate the U.S. populace about the role religion actually did and didn't play in our nation's founding. Now, were any of those quotes misquoted? Were any of those quotes wrong? No, they were right. So what is he saying? If that were the goal, the ads would include at least some of the plethora of historic commentary that paints an altogether different picture. Yes, we have a free country. Yes, there were some leaders who weren't Christians. He says, are the ads purveyors hoping to pave the way for our lawmakers to pass legislation formally declaring the U.S. a Christian nation? I don't think that was their intention, to pass legislation to say they're formally a Christian nation. And what about total absence of Christian nation legislation? Were our founders so inept that they somehow overlooked the need to actually draft laws and enshrine their true vision for this great land? Does this guy not understand history? I'm sorry. The reason why they didn't pass Christian legislation is because they didn't want the government to interfere with the churches. They didn't want the government to corrupt the churches, our faith. They wanted a people in the civil society to be able to practice their faith freely. Should non-Christians, whether atheists, agnostics, or adherents of another faith, not be allowed to immigrate? None of this is even said in this article. This is where we are now. Once again, we're reacting rather than thinking. In God we trust. Just saying that as a country, many of our leaders, many of our people, we put our faith in God over government. We put in faith in God over the institutions of man. And when we get back to that, by the way, we'll be a better society in the long run. You've been listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5. Make sure to check out the podcast if you missed any of the show, and I will catch you all next week. In God we trust. God bless America.